Unless you've been living under a rock, you probably already heard that La Niña is making another appearance this winter. Now, what does that mean for us? You may be wondering. And in today's video, we're going to go over just that. How does La Niña affect the winter season in the United States particularly, and how will it affect this season overall for the winter season of 2024 to 2025? All coming up in just a bit. All right, I want to jump into a brief background here of what La Niña is. So if you're not familiar, La Niña is the reference to a type of weather pattern that occurs in the equatorial Pacific in a region known as the Niño 3.4 region. So this region is characterized by an area of trade winds that moves from South America over to Asia. And we see this interacting with the sea surface temperature. So when the trade winds are stronger, this creates a process known as upwelling, where the warmer waters are pushed to the west towards Asia, and this allows for colder water from deeper down below to rise up to the surface, thus influencing the weather patterns above. Now in El Nino, this is the opposite, where we see those trade winds weaken and we see the warmer waters linger, thus letting the tropical air mass linger and creating a lot of tropical thunderstorms that linger in that area and thus affect the global weather pattern by influencing different weather patterns at that. But right now we're just going to focus on the United States. So right now we're focusing on La Niña. Okay, we have stronger trade winds coming into the picture this winter. We're going to see colder upwelling there and colder waters in the equatorial Pacific. So what does this mean for us? Well, by taking a look at this map that I made, we can see that we have two different distinct jet streams that are going to be interacting here. Okay, so the subtropical jet stream that has been active down in the southern United States for months now with El Nino is now going to weaken. It's no longer going to be in the picture. Okay, we just have that Pacific jet stream up there indicated by the light blue, and then we have our polar jet stream influenced by the dark blue there. So as you can see, these two interact around the Idaho-Montana area typically. Now within the La Niña pattern, obviously we're going to see other patterns interacting here this winter, so this isn't going to be the exact thing that we see, okay? This is a cookie cutter La Niña. And what we're going to see here is this winter we have other patterns playing into this that are going to shift things around a little bit, and we'll get into that later what you can expect. But right now let's focus on the typical La Niña. So we see wetter conditions from the Pacific jet stream being brought up into the Pacific Northwest. Okay, this isn't just wet because it's always usually wet up there, right? We see a lot of rain in Seattle and a lot of the areas due to the orographical effects in the Pacific Northwest, but we also see increased activity in the Pacific Northwest that's going to lead to a lot more rainfall and precipitation and snowfall overall being brought to this area in the Pacific Northwest. Now we see a lot of warmer conditions being locked to the south. Okay, the colder air masses are going to be located in the north. It's going to be blocked by that polar jet stream that we see there with the blue. This acts as a barrier or a wall for temperature air masses. And what we see here is we see colder conditions to the north there and warmer conditions to the south. Now we also see drier conditions. Okay, so with a lack of that subtropical jet stream that brings that moisture from the Pacific down throughout much of the southern United States, we don't see as much precipitation, and this is going to lead to a drier effect typically around the Texas area, New Mexico, and southern Arizona there, and even down into the portions of Louisiana and Florida. So we see a lot of those areas there seeing drier conditions this winter to be expected. Now we also see wetter conditions for much of the Ohio Valley and even down towards the Smoky Mountains there. Those are all areas that we can expect some wetter conditions typically with a La Niña, and I do suspect that's going to be kind of an area where we can pay attention for a little more storminess this season, so that's something we'll have to keep an eye on as we move closer to this winter. But overall, you can see this has a pretty big influence, okay? With an El Nino, you can actually flip these conditions, and this is kind of what we see with an El Nino. So flip the colder conditions to the south, the warmer conditions to the north, drier conditions in those areas where the wet conditions are, and wet conditions where the drier conditions are. That's usually a cookie cutter El Nino. Now, of course, obviously other weather patterns play into this, but overall, we do see that this is what we typically expect with these cookie cutter systems. All right, so now that I've worn my voice down to the level of extinction of dinosaurs, we're going to see now what our current forecast for La Niña is this season. And we're going to take a look at a graph here. So I do want you to keep in mind that this came out September 12th of 2024. These typically come out each month, and right now we don't currently have one for October. That will be coming out later, likely around October 12th. NOAA issues these monthly, so we don't currently have a new one, but this is the one that we're working with. That's our latest forecast for the intensity of La Niña. Now, taking a look here, you can see that August, September, and October, we're already kind of in that ENSO neutral phase, so that's indicated by that gray region there. That's that neutral phase, and you can see by September, October, November, kind of where we're at right now, we're expected to flip into La Niña. So we're going to be expecting to flip the page here and head into La Niña, and we actually see that peaking right there around November, December, and January. Then we see a new story come back. Okay, so we're only heading into this really quick, all right? This isn't going to be sticking around like the last couple years in 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2023. This is going to be a very quick process. So we're going to head into winter. It's going to make a little appearance around Christmas time like your uncle does. And then just like that, it's going to bounce, okay? It's not going to be sticking around a long time, and it's going to be heading back out to a neutral phase where we see that pick up around February, March, and April. Obviously, that's subject to change, and that's likely going to change around that time frame. But then we see this really start to kick in around March, April, May, and April, May, and June. That's where we see that neutral phase kind of kick back up. And then from there, we don't know what's going to happen. We could speculate, but that's not in the forecast. That's heading out in the summer, so we'll have to see from there as we get closer. All right, so taking that into consideration, what are we expecting to see this winter? All right, so I'm not going to give you a whole bunch of fancy maps like I usually do in my winter forecast. I have plenty of other videos that have done that, and we do have more coming out before the official winter season starts. But this video is speculating on La Nina, and particularly the effects of La Nina. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into our snowfall forecast anomaly map. I've actually updated this because a lot of people want to know what's going on with the snowfall. So this will kind of cover both temperature and precipitation in one map only. So we're going to get briefly into this before I describe each region. So we are expecting cooler, wet conditions for the Pacific Northwest this winter. I do believe that that's going to be a pretty active cold and wet pattern there. And I also believe for much of the Ohio Valley and the Great Lakes region, we're going to see a lot of active precipitation patterns. It's going to be a little more cooler as you get further north overall. So I do believe that towards Montana, all the way down through much of the north central United States, we're going to see a lot of cooler, deep Arctic air masses. Then we also see, as you get down to the Ohio Valley, things start to warm up a little bit. Not as cold, but we're still expecting those cooler conditions there, definitely below freezing a lot of the time. And that's going to bring some pretty decent chances for snowfall, though I don't believe you're going to be seeing any above average snowfall there for the Ohio Valley. Now, as we move north into portions of the northern Ohio Valley and into the Great Lakes, we see those areas of above average snowfall. I do believe that that's going to be a pretty active pattern there. A lot of stormy conditions, a lot of cooler temperatures, and we do see that lake effect snowfall coming into the picture there as well. Now, for the Northeast, I do believe we're going to see a pretty active precipitation pattern there, though I'm not too sure about the snowfall right now. We do see warmer Atlantic temperatures, the sea surface temperatures that is, and we are expecting that to influence the overall weather there, keeping things a little bit more warmer for less snowfall overall on the surface, which will likely lead to some decreased snowfall potential. Now, obviously, down to the south, we are expecting drier and warmer conditions. I don't believe that to change too much. That's going to stick to the pretty typical La Nina pattern there. And I do believe that overall, we're going to see a fairly dry and warm winter there for the south. And finally, for the southwest United States, I do believe it's obviously, we always see dry conditions there, especially in the winter season when things really do dry out. I don't believe that's going to change at all. We're going to see a dry winter there. Not expecting any drier conditions there for the south. It's already dry enough, not really getting any more dry than that, but it's going to be warmer. We're going to see some warmer conditions this winter, and I do believe that's going to be in the picture for this winter season for the southwest. All right, now getting into the depth of our snowfall forecast here, we're going to start off in the Pacific Northwest there. We have a light blue region there for the Pacific Northwest. This is your slightly above average snowfall. Now, this indicates some slightly increased chances for snowfall. Obviously, when we bring this map up in every forecast, we do say that the slight increase or the slight decrease is not changing in a very dramatic sense, but it's going to be a slight increase overall, so maybe a couple inches extra, 1 to 10. That range is really slightly above average. It's not really anything to ponder over for your annual snowfall, but it is an increase overall and a slight one at that. So we're also seeing the same scenario there for much of the Great Lakes and Midwest there. We do see that slight increase indicated by that light blue region. Now, moving back to the Pacific Northwest, we do see that dark blue region. This is your above average region for snowfall. This is where you will notice a pretty big change in your snowfall, and this is going to be in the positive direction. So if it's already snowy here, we see that every winter, really snowy winter, and I don't believe that's going to change at all. But this season, I am expecting a lot more on top of that. We see a very active precipitation pattern, cooler temperatures moving down from the north, and I do believe that's a recipe for pretty active snowfall for the season. We're going to see a lot of snowfall accumulation in this area. We also see the similar story over here for the Great Lakes. We see that lake effect coming into play. All right, so these lakes have been baking all summer, right? Now we have these cooler conditions expected to move over the top. If you know anything about lake effect snowfall, this is the process that starts the lake effect snowfall. We see warm lakes and that cooler air moves over top. This creates a convective process that leads to the activity of lake effect snowfall. And if this enhances it with warmer lake temperatures and cooler temperatures aloft due to cooler air moving in, this is only going to enhance that process. And with the systems moving through, this is going to act like the same type of deal. So we're going to see a lot of active winter storms moving through this area, and obviously the lake effect snowfall on top of that. So I do believe that's going to be pretty active for these areas in that dark blue region for the Great Lakes region. Now we have an area down here for the southwest that typically sees snowfall, and for these areas I am indicating a light yellow region, this is your slightly decreased snowfall, and I do believe that you're going to be seeing a little less snowfall than usual for these areas. This includes some of the southern Rockies and a lot of the areas that typically see snowfall in the higher elevations across portions of the southwestern United States. I do believe overall you're going to be seeing a little less snowfall, nothing too major in that change. We also see the same situation over here for much of the northeast. Like I had mentioned, the sea surface temperatures are high right now, and that's obviously going to lead to some warmer conditions over the air around that area. And I do believe along a lot of the coastal areas throughout New England and the northeast and even into the mid-Atlantic, we're going to see some decreased snowfall potential as a result. So still a lot of precipitation moving through the northeast and mid-Atlantic, but I do believe overall we're going to see some decreased snowfall potential as we move into this winter. All right, I want to thank you all so much for watching today's video. If you did enjoy today's video, I'd ask that you consider subscribing for more US forecasts free of charge, and I would ask you consider following the Weather at a Glance official Facebook page for more inside information and complimentary personal forecasts when you message me on that Facebook page. Also, I want to give a huge shout out to our channel members, Chris, Betty, and Jay Case. Thank you so much for supporting the channel and continuing to support what we do. And with that, I will see you all in the next video.